You're not here for revenge. You're not here to be missed like a loud echo, desperate, lingering, asking to be remembered. That's not what this is. This is about something far more silent, far more serious. It's about reclaiming the gravity of your own absence. Not so she regrets losing you, but so you finally return to yourself. Because the truth is, the version of you she walked away from wasn't even you. It was the man who forgot his weight, the man who bent, reached, explained, begged, and deep down, you know it, because that part of you was already gone before she ever left. You don't want her to miss the man who pleaded. You want her to feel the emptiness of the space you left when you stood up and remembered who you were. Not loudly, not with rage, not with performance, but with a quiet, unshakable decision that said, I'm done speaking for what should have been seen. Zeno didn't write revenge into Stoicism. After his shipwreck, after losing everything, he didn't search for payback. He walked silently among men, observing, listening, learning what pain doesn't say out loud. That silence, that stillness in the middle of collapse, became the foundation of an entire philosophy. Stoicism was not born from a need to win. It was born from a man who lost everything and chose not to lose himself. And then there's Seneca, a man who understood that life isn't short, it's just wasted. Wasted in arguments, in messages you never should have sent, in over-explaining what should have been obvious, in chasing a version of love that demanded your collapse just to survive another day. Every second you spent trying to be seen by her was a second stolen from the man you're supposed to rebuild now. So, let me offer you this. Not an image of a man crying on his knees, but of one walking away, back straight, voice silent. He's not trying to be remembered, but the space he leaves behind is unforgettable. His absence lingers. His name doesn't come up, but his presence does. When she reaches for her phone and thinks twice, when she hears silence where once there was pleading, when she realizes the man who always stayed has finally stopped waiting. This isn't about hurting her. This isn't about games. This is about becoming the kind of man who no longer needs to be missed, because the man he's becoming is too focused on being whole again. No noise, no performance, just the quiet rebuilding of something sacred. Now we begin. You didn't really leave if pieces of you still linger in her inbox, in her mind, in her control. Every message you send, every check-in disguised as concern, every attempt to stay friends, it keeps your energy tethered to a version of you she already walked past. Real absence doesn't leak, it doesn't hover, it doesn't explain. Real absence is a closed chapter, not one left half written. And that's what makes it unforgettable, because most men don't leave. They hover, they pause at the exit and keep looking back. But the man who truly leaves, cleanly, fully, without residue, creates a silence so complete, she has no choice but to face it. There's a difference between emotional detachment and emotional coldness. Detachment isn't cruelty, it's discipline. It's what happens when a man finally refuses to leak his power, his self-worth, his inner voice into someone who no longer values it. When you detach, you're not punishing her. You're protecting the last sacred part of yourself, the part that still believes in dignity. The Zeigarnik effect. Unresolved stories haunt the mind. But here's the truth most men miss. If you resolve the story for her, if you try to explain it all, give her closure, make sure she understands, you're setting her free from the very uncertainty that could have made her reflect. Closure, when given too easily, robs her of the silence needed to face herself. If she never has to wonder, she never has to feel the cost. Zeno didn't beg to be remembered. He didn't write letters to those who watched him lose everything. He built a life where his presence became philosophy, not noise. His silence wasn't passive. It was his first form of leadership. You lead by what you no longer chase. You lead by absence that speaks, not presence that pleads. If you want to be unforgettable, you can't linger like a shadow of who you were. You have to vanish with the dignity of who you've become. She won't miss you if she knows you're still available, even if she's gone. Even if she says she needs space. If she can still sense you checking her stories, answering her texts, reacting with kindness laced in quiet desperation, then your absence is a performance, not a decision. You've left crumbs. You've made her departure easy. You've built an emotional doorway with no lock, no frame, just an open path where your self-worth bleeds out quietly. That's not kindness. That's collapse wearing a polite mask. Men often confuse grace with access. They think being nice will make her reconsider. But a woman doesn't question the presence of a man who never truly left. She only begins to feel the weight of his absence when it's absolute, when he stops replying, stops waiting, stops peeking around emotional corners, hoping she looks back. A man who leaves half-heartedly becomes forgettable. A man who closes the door, silently, firmly, becomes the one she remembers when the room finally goes quiet. Leaving the door open isn't just about her. It fractures you. It splits your spirit between hope and truth, and over time, it corrodes your spine. You start compromising how you speak, how you move, how you live, because part of you is still bracing for her return. And that illusion, that silent bargaining, breaks your internal structure more than any breakup ever could. You stop growing because you're still waiting. You stop leading because you're still watching the door. True Stoic withdrawal is not angry. It's not loud. It's not bitter. It's clean, like a sword being sheathed after the final strike. No need to wave it around. No need to announce the end. Just the quiet, sacred act of putting your energy back in its place. A cracked shield can't protect you, and a man who hasn't truly left can't rebuild. The door must close, not with force, but with finality. Your closure doesn't need her signature. It doesn't need her understanding. It lives in the quiet moment where you choose your dignity over her delay. That's when she starts to feel the shift. Not when you say you're done, but when she senses you've already left. Not physically, emotionally, spiritually, fully. Most men underestimate the power of saying nothing. They think silence is passive, empty, weak. But in truth, silence is the only language left when dignity replaces desperation. Because silence, when chosen with clarity, teaches louder than explanation ever could. It doesn't plead. It doesn't justify. It doesn't offer one more chance to be misunderstood. It just stands there, unmoved, unshaken, undeniable. Epictetus said it clearly. If someone does wrong, it is not your job to fix their judgment, only your reaction. You're not here to correct how she saw you. You're not here to rewrite her narrative. You're here to reclaim your own. The man who does not explain, does not defend, does not reach, becomes a mirror. And she has to look into that mirror without your voice softening the reflection. That's where the haunting begins. Not in what you said, but in what you didn't say. Every time you stay quiet, she revisits the moment. Not because she wants to, but because there's no closure, no soft landing, no emotional cushion to rest on. Just the cold imprint of your absence, reminding her that you had more weight than she realized. Every message you don't send becomes a page she rereads in her mind, wondering what you would have said, what you might be feeling, what you've now become without her. Words give people resolution. Silence gives them reflection. When you speak, you allow her to move on. When you don't, you force her to sit with the unknown. And that unknown becomes the very space where your value multiplies, because now, it's not your presence she remembers. It's your restraint. It's the calm withdrawal of a man who didn't need to be heard to be remembered. She won't miss the noise. She'll miss the weight. And when all the noise fades, her new routines, her distractions, her deflections, it's your silence that will echo in the places no one else can reach. Not because you wanted to be missed, but because you finally remembered how much power there is in not needing to be. You don't rebuild by proving something to her. You rebuild by becoming someone new in silence. Masculine presence isn't formed in her inbox. It's forged in solitude, when no one's looking, when no one's clapping, when no one is offering you anything but your own reflection. That's where you start. Not to show her what she lost, but to remember what you forgot. Every time you chase her attention, you subtract from your center, because attention-seeking is rooted in absence. But presence, that real, grounded, masculine presence, comes from a man who has made peace with not being seen, who moves with precision, sleeps with discipline, eats without impulse, speaks only when necessary. These are not traits you perform for an audience. These are rituals you honor when the world has turned away. This is how presence is born. Start with posture. The way you hold your body when you enter a room speaks louder than the best words you could write. Command your space, not for validation, but because the space belongs to you. Next, your time. Stop wasting it in places that don't feed your soul. Every hour you reclaim is a brick in the foundation of who you are becoming. Sleep like you're preparing for war. Not because you expect one, but because peace demands readiness. These are not trends, they are sacred, and they are yours. She may remember your smile, your scent, your touch, but what truly stays with her is your emotional gravity, that unspoken feeling that you knew who you were, even when everything was falling apart, the way you looked at the world without flinching, the way you sat in your silence without needing applause. That's what lingers. That's what makes her think twice in a quiet moment, because very few men carry that weight. You don't build presence by demanding to be seen. You build it by becoming so still, so complete, so anchored, that when you do speak, the room shifts. And when you don't, the silence does it for you. Presence isn't about being noticed. It's about being undeniable. And that starts always with how you treat yourself when no one else is watching. It's not a conversation. It's not a dramatic exit. It's not a declaration or a final text hoping she'll chase you. It's a moment, quiet, internal, absolute, when something in you shifts, when the hope dies without bitterness, when the waiting ends without warning. That's when she starts to feel it. Not your anger, not your absence, but your indifference. And that's what haunts her. The day you stop waiting is not the day you shout it. It's the day you live like it. No hesitation, no quiet checking, no pretending to move on while still looking over your shoulder. She doesn't need to hear it. She needs to feel it, and she will, in the way you no longer ask, in the way you no longer hover, in the stillness of your silence that no longer wants to be understood. Don't announce your freedom. Don't make it a moment of power. Make it a rite of passage, one she doesn't get to witness, one she'll only recognize later. Too late, when the space you left doesn't echo back. That moment when she realizes he's not waiting, he's not watching, he's not coming back. That realization won't come with noise. It'll come in stillness, in her own space, in her own time, and it will land heavier than any confrontation ever could. Seneca reminded us, the truly wise man expects nothing, not because he's numb, but because he no longer needs. That kind of man terrifies people who once fed on his hope, because his silence is no longer passive. It's complete, and she'll feel it, in the way you stop showing up, in the way you don't explain, in the way you carry on like your soul has moved rooms. It doesn't mean you stopped caring. It means you stopped surrendering your time, your breath, your energy, to something that couldn't hold your weight. She will realize, not when you close the door, but when she reaches for it, and it's no longer there. After she pulls away, emotionally, physically, silently, most men go straight into proving mode. They think if they just show enough worth, she'll reconsider. If they demonstrate their loyalty, their pain, their effort, maybe she'll remember. Maybe she'll return. But all that effort does is scream one thing louder than anything else. You're still seeking permission to exist. You weren't left because you weren't enough. You were left because somewhere along the way, you forgot to enforce the line where your dignity ends and her access stops. And now, instead of building that line in stone, you're drawing it in sand, hoping she won't step over it again. But she will, because you've taught her that your self-respect is negotiable, that it's something she gets to define, that it moves depending on her mood. Men are taught to fix things, to restore, to fight for what they love. But this isn't about love. This is about standard. And Stoicism teaches one brutal truth. What you tolerate becomes your standard. If you tolerate delay, confusion, mixed signals, disrespect, you're not the victim of it. You're the architect. And rebuilding starts when you stop asking for her to see your worth and start holding it like a man who will not bend again. Redemption doesn't mean getting her back. It doesn't mean becoming so impressive she regrets losing you. It means redefining what you give your energy to, who you allow near your peace, what you accept, not out of fear, but out of clarity. Redemption is not re-entry, it's redefinition. You're not walking back into the same place hoping it feels different. You're walking forward, into a life where your boundaries are not requests, but requirements. You don't need her to tell you that you mattered. You need to stop giving her the power to decide whether you do. Let her remember the man who stopped performing, who stopped asking, who stopped breaking himself to be seen. Let her remember not what you said, but what you finally stopped tolerating, because that's the moment she'll realize you didn't become colder, you became clear. Missing her doesn't make you weak, it makes you honest. What breaks you is pretending you don't. What poisons your growth is the shame you attach to your own emotion. Longing is part of the process, but only if you let it shape you, not define you. It's when you lie to yourself about it, when you bury it instead of facing it, that it festers into something darker, something that chains you to a past you haven't fully owned. You don't need to run from the ache. You need to sit with it. Let it say what it needs to say. Let it remind you of what you gave, what you lost, what still echoes in the places you don't talk about. Because inside that longing is a lesson, not about her, about you, about the part of you that still needs your own attention, about the places in your soul that were neglected long before she arrived. That's where power begins, not in silencing pain, but in listening to what it's asking you to rebuild. Zeno walked the streets of Athens after losing everything, not to find what he lost, but to discover what had never been born. He wasn't chasing, he was confronting, facing the hollow inside himself with nothing but silence, presence, and purpose. That's the fire you need to step into, not to erase her, but to meet the man who waited beneath the noise, the man who was always there, hidden beneath the version of yourself you performed to be loved. Let the longing do its work. Let it burn away your illusions. Let it strip down the false confidence, the performative strength, the masked indifference. And when it's done, what's left will be something unshakable, not a man who never felt pain, but a man who walked through it without becoming it, a man whose longing became his crucible, not his prison. Missing her is not the problem, it's what you do with it. Let it push you into discipline. Let it pull you deeper into your presence. Let it show you where you gave too much, where you forgot yourself, where you can no longer afford to betray your own silence. Because when that ache finally fades, it won't be because she came back. It'll be because you did, fully, finally, without needing to be seen. You don't make her miss you by showing her what she lost. You make her miss you by becoming someone who no longer needs to be missed. Because the truth is, longing is forgettable, presence is not. And a man who truly understands his worth doesn't wait to be remembered. He becomes the kind of presence that reshapes how others remember themselves. Zeno never tried to be seen. He didn't rebuild his life to prove a point. He simply lived with such stillness, such internal power, that the world took notice in silence. He didn't chase closure. He didn't seek recognition. He became the foundation of a philosophy that outlived his pain. And that's what you are now rebuilding. Not an image, not a reputation, but a structure inside of you that can't be shaken by absence. Chrysippus followed him, not by echoing noise, but by deepening the logic, by showing that discipline isn't about repression, it's about restraint. That silence isn't weakness, it's clarity. He didn't perform Stoicism, he lived it, in how he held his space, in how he responded, in how he refused to make his emotions a spectacle. You don't need a final word. You don't need her to understand. You need to walk without turning, because the man who walks without noise, who leaves without slamming doors, without begging to be seen, without collapsing into one last message, that man doesn't get forgotten. He becomes a silence that lives in her decisions, in her moments of stillness, in the quiet places where she once expected your voice and finds only space. Let it end like this: a door, not slammed, not locked, not bitter, just no longer yours to open. And that final act, not of anger, not of ego, but of release, will be the most unforgettable silence you'll ever leave behind.